In today's video, we're going to be building a modern key rack with a very unique hidden feature. Stick around, you're not going to want to miss this one. Oh man. So this happened to me the other day. All right, Kara, I'm headed out. Kara? 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 All right, I guess I'll text her. That feels like a lot of work. What's the worst that could happen?
Evan, while you were gone, Phillies player Brandon Marsh was here, and I got to meet him. And I didn't text you because I know you weren't here.
It's a 100% true story. So obviously, with the host of other professional athletes that we plan on meeting, we got to ensure that this issue never happens again. And I think I came up with the perfect solution. And that solution lies within the key holder itself. I've never been a fan of this key holder. You know, we bought it at a thrift store, we painted it, we put it on the wall, and never gave it any more thought. And when we decided it was time for an upgrade, I thought, how cool would it be to have a feature where I could tap my phone against it and it would automatically send a message to Kara saying that I'm heading out. That could be on the left side, and then on the right side, I could tap my phone and it could say, turn off the lights. It's an overcomplicated solution for a problem that doesn't exist, but I figured if I'm building the key rack anyway, I might as well throw in a cool feature. So I'm gonna pop down to the wood shop and we're gonna get this thing built. All right, so to get this party started, I'm using scrap wood from my 2 previous lamp projects. Links to both of those videos are in the description, but we're looking at cherry and walnut. I had to head over to the planer because some of these offcuts are not perfectly flat like you can see here. So I just fed those through a couple of times until I got a nice flat surface. Next, it's over to the table saw where I pop the dust collection on, set my width to 3.5 inches, and then fed the cherry through. Next up, I'll actually pop the dust collection off because I need to get my fence pretty close to the blade, and the dust collector won't allow me to do that. I'll feed the strips through, making sure to use push sticks as to not get my hands too close to the blade. Then bring the blade up high so I can fit the sled on. When working with pieces of board, I like to square them up before I make any measurements just to make sure that it's a perfect 90 degree on the end. I'm using the sled because I have to make repeat cuts, and each of those need to be 1.5 inches. So I took 1.5 inch spacer, and I know what you're thinking. How do you know that that's 1.5 inches? Oh. Nice. Thank you, measuring tape. I'll lock that right into place and then slice off 6 even pieces. Yeah, I'm not gonna put this in. Or maybe I will. Ha! Prank's on you. Now using the height of those blocks, I'm able to cut the walnut. Organization is key for this project, so between every step I like to just lay out the pieces to make sure I have exactly what I'm looking for before going to the next step. Using the T-square, I mark out some lines, making sure to give just a little bit of extra room in between, and you'll see why I do that in a second. Then of course it's back over to the table saw to cut the board down to size. And then notch out some slots. Typically this would be a job for a router and a chisel or a band saw, but I don't really have a good setup for either of those. And since this is going to be behind the key holder, you're not really going to see it, so I'm not really concerned that it's perfect looking. I slice out the edges and then notch all the excess out, strip by strip, making sure to keep my fingers as far away from the blade as possible. So now you can see when I line these up, I'm able to kick the pieces of walnut out, which are the hooks for the keys. But as you can see, as it stands right now, there's not enough space for a key to go on, which we'll address in a second. But first we got to drill some holes. I popped a bit into the drill press. Like I said, organization is key on a project like this, so I marked all the faces just to make sure I didn't get confused later on. Now it's back over to the drill press. I set up some scrap pieces of board to make a jig. This way, every hole that I drill will be in the exact same place. I drilled out 6 holes, making sure that the X was on the left side for every single one. Then repeated that same process for the walnut key hooks. And now for my favorite part of the project, the shish kebab. I bought a 12-inch metal dowel rod which will act as the hinge mechanism for the hooks. I put the whole kebab together and tested it out. And like I said earlier, you can see that there's not enough clearance on the hooks. We're gonna have to do something about that. So I drilled a few holes in some scrap pieces of wood and headed back over to the sled. The best part about building your own sled instead of buying a really expensive one is that you can drill right into it without having any heartburn. I found the angle I wanted the key hooks to be cut at and put them in. A common theme on my channel, and the reason behind building this jig, is that I don't have every tool that I need. I'd preferably like to cut this out on a bandsaw, but I don't have one. So I use what's at my disposal, and since I want to do it safely, this jig is the best option. I continued this process of cutting and flipping until I had 5 identical pieces. Then it's back over to the drill press. I adjusted these bolts so that my plunge depth would be exactly the same for every single pass. I drilled out these little recesses, which are perfect for a magnet. I got 100 of these little magnets on Amazon for $10. The link is in the description below. It also came with this long metal piece, which will help me determine the polarity of the magnet. That way I know I'm putting it in on the right side every time. Like a glove. I repeated that for the other 4. And then hammered them in just to make sure they were fit super snug. Now it's back to assembling the shish kebab again. And this is when I ran into my first problem. The hooks were sitting higher than the face of the key holder. And the culprit, as you can see, is that some of them are not completely flush on the back. This is a job for the chisels. It was a bit of a hack job, but I was able to get these down pretty flat. And again, since they're facing the back of the project, nobody's ever going to see this, so I don't have that much heartburn. Next up is to find the magnet placement on the body of the key holder. I deconstructed the shish kebab and marked right under the magnet of the first hook, then put my spacer in between and repeated that process all the way down. And you'll never guess where I headed next. That's right, the drill press. I notched out those 5 little magnet holes, then bada bing bada boom, put those magnets right in. And now for the magic part. I bought a 50-pack of these NFC tags on Amazon. I know this is possible on Android, but I have an iPhone, so I'm going to show you how I did it here. I popped into the Shortcuts app and created a new shortcut using this send message feature. Up here, you tap your message. I just wrote, I'm heading out. And then you tap your recipient and type whoever your recipient is. You then go back to the home screen, automations, and new automation. Scroll down until you find NFC tag, hit scan, and then by tapping it to the NFC tag, it automatically read it and sank it to the phone. You can name it whatever you want, hit run immediately, and then go up to next. And then you can see in the My Shortcuts menu, the shortcut you just created. In my case, I named it Send Message. I tightened the block down to the vise, and then drilled that into the table. Tracing out the NFC tag, I find myself in the unique situation where I own a Festool router, but not any Forstner bits. So instead of popping over to the drill press, I use the router instead. I plunged down and routed out a 1-inch hole. Then filling that hole with tape, I tested it out to make sure it worked, and it did. So I repeated the process on the other side. And before I knew it, it was time to glue up. I did a really, really bad job of focusing my camera on this, which you'll see in a bit, but it's pretty self-explanatory. You just add some glue, slide the pieces on, and clamp it down. Man, does my filmer ever check his focus? That guy's on thin ice. That guy is also me, team of one. I slotted the NFC tag in on the other side, packed in some tape to hold it tight against the wood. I let the project sit overnight before popping off all the clamps. Here you can see how the hook mechanism works. The magnets hold them all into place perfectly. Now it's time for everybody's favorite part, sanding. I grabbed the random orbit sander, took 120 over the whole project before switching it out for 220, and repeating that process. I hate sanding, but it's a necessary step. And now for my favorite part, Rubio Monocoat. I'm quickly falling in love with this finish. I was using tung oil before, and I'm not the biggest fan. It smells so bad, it goes on very thick, it takes a lot of coats, and has a very long curing time if you use pure tung oil. This Rubio Monocoat goes on, and then in 15 minutes you buff it off with a rag, and that's all you need to do. It's very, very expensive, but I think it's worth it in the long run when you factor in how much time you save. And just like that, another project finished. Cue the cool guy montage. I love how this key rack turned out. I think the Rubio Monocoat looks perfect on the Cherry. When I tap my phone on the right side of the key hook, it composes a message to Kara that says I'm heading out. And when I tap it on the left side, it communicates with my smart home devices to turn the lights off. Overall, this was a really fun project, and I have a lot of other ideas coming up, so make sure you don't miss them. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Okay, I need you to read this to the camera.
Evan, while you were gone, Phillies player Brandon Marsh was here, and I got to meet him. And I didn't text you because I know you weren't here.